Elena always believed that love was something you protected with both hands. She believed that when two people chose each other, they chose to stay, even on the days when everything felt heavy. For 3 years, she had been with Daniel, a quiet and thoughtful man who loved books, long walks, and simple conversations. Their love was gentle, like a calm river flowing through a quiet countryside. At least, that was how it felt in the beginning. But love does not always break loudly. Sometimes it begins with small cracks, tiny moments, tiny words, tiny silences. Elena noticed the first crack on a weekday evening. She returned home early from work, carrying Daniel's favorite pastry as a small surprise. She imagined his smile when he saw it. But when she walked into their flat, she saw him sitting on the sofa, scrolling endlessly on his phone, not looking up even when she greeted him. "You're home early," he said, not lifting his eyes. "I thought we could have tea together," she replied, placing the pastry on the table. He nodded, still scrolling. "I've already eaten." Something inside her fell, quietly, like a leaf dropping from a tired tree. She didn't say anything. She simply nodded, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. Days passed, and Daniel's distance grew like a shadow stretching slowly across their relationship. He spoke less. He listened less. He laughed less. Elena tried to ask him what was wrong, but every question she asked seemed to push him further away. One night, she sat beside him while he was watching television. She placed her hand on his, hoping he would hold it. Instead, he shifted slightly, as if the touch made him uncomfortable. The rejection was small, almost invisible, but it echoed loudly in her heart. "Daniel, are we okay?" she finally asked, her voice soft. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I don't know, Elena. I'm tired. Work has been stressful." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to tell herself it was just a phase, but deep down, she felt a distance that had nothing to do with work. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet breathing of the man who felt suddenly unfamiliar. She remembered the early days, how he used to wait for her after work, how he used to bring her flowers for no reason, how he used to kiss her forehead before she fell asleep. Where had that version of him gone? The next morning, she left for work early, hoping the fresh air would help clear her thoughts. But as she walked to the bus stop, she realized the truth. Sometimes love does not break all at once. Sometimes it breaks slowly, gently, painfully, and Elena felt the first crack inside her heart. The following week moved slowly, as if the days themselves felt heavy. Elena tried to stay hopeful. She cooked Daniel's favorite meals, left small notes on the kitchen counter, and asked about his day whenever he came home. But each effort faded into silence, like a message thrown into a deep well with no echo returning. Daniel wasn't unkind. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. His distance was quieter than that, polite, distracted, drifting. He still responded when she spoke, but his eyes no longer lingered on her face. He smiled at her, but the smile no longer reached his eyes. He hugged her goodnight, but his arms no longer held any warmth. One evening, Elena returned home to find Daniel sitting at the dining table with a cup of tea. That used to be her favorite sight, hearing the soft clink of the cup, knowing he was waiting for her. But today, when she opened the door, he looked up in surprise, as if he wasn't expecting her at all. "Oh, you're back," he said. "I finished early today," she replied, placing her bag on the chair. "Did you eat already?" He nodded, "Yes. Would you like to take a walk later? The weather is quite nice." Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm tired. Maybe another time." She had heard that sentence too many times now. Maybe another time. Those words had slowly become walls around him, walls she could no longer climb. That night, Elena stood alone on the balcony. The city lights shimmered below her, each one glowing with a life of its own. She used to love this view, especially with Daniel standing beside her, their hands intertwined. The memory felt so distant now, like it belonged to another couple from another life. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Maybe I'm overthinking," she told herself. "Maybe he just needs space." But the truth whispered back, "Maybe he just doesn't need me the way he used to." The next morning, Elena noticed something else. Daniel had changed his phone password. She didn't want to be the kind of person who checked his phone. Trust was always important to her. But the change stung. Not because she wanted to spy, but because he hadn't even told her. They used to share everything. Their phones lay on the table openly, without fear or secrets. Now, there was a lock she couldn't open. One night during dinner, she gathered her courage. "Daniel, are you sure you're all right? You seem far away." He put down his fork and sighed, the same tired sigh she had heard too many times. "Elena, I don't know what to say. I'm going through a lot, but I don't want to talk about it right now." "Can't you talk to me?" she whispered. "I'm your partner." He looked at her and she saw something in his eyes. Not anger, not sadness, but confusion. As if he didn't know what role she still played in his life. "I just need time," he said. She nodded slowly, though her heart tightened. They were in the same room, yet it felt like they were miles apart. And for the first time, Elena wondered whether love could die without either person meaning for it to happen. The next few days became a quiet routine of unspoken words. Elena woke early, prepared breakfast, and left a plate for Daniel on the table. Sometimes he ate it, sometimes he didn't. When she returned home from work, she often found him in the same place, on the sofa, staring at his phone or watching something that didn't interest him much. The silence between them grew heavier, settling into the corners of their home like dust no one bothered to sweep away. Every evening, Elena waited for the right moment to speak. She wanted to ask him what had changed. She wanted to ask him where his heart had gone. But every time she opened her mouth, the fear of hearing the truth stopped her. Instead, she smiled gently, asked him how his day was, and pretended not to notice the growing emptiness. One Thursday night, she gathered her courage. She sat beside him on the sofa, placing her hands on her lap to stop them from trembling. "Daniel," she said softly, "can we talk?" He didn't look away from the television immediately. When he finally turned to her, his expression was unreadable. Tired, distracted, somewhere else. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I feel like there's a distance between us. I try to reach you, but I don't feel you reaching back. I don't want to guess anymore. Please, just tell me what's going on." Daniel paused, rubbing the back of his neck. It was a gesture she had seen him make when he felt trapped or uncomfortable. "Elena, I'm not good at this," he said slowly. "I've been trying to figure things out on my own." "Figure out what?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked away, staring at the wall as if the answer was hidden there. "That silence hurts more than anything you could say," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I know you're going through something, but keeping me in the dark, it makes me feel like I'm losing you." Daniel leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I just don't want to hurt you." "But this is hurting me," she said, blinking back her tears. "Every day." He opened his mouth as if to say something, but closed it again. That was the moment Elena realized that silence had become his preferred answer, because speaking out loud might force him to admit something he wasn't ready to say. Later that night, Elena stood in the kitchen washing dishes, even though there were only 2 cups in the sink. The warm water didn't soothe her. She felt a coldness inside her chest that she couldn't ignore anymore. She remembered the early days when Daniel used to talk endlessly, sharing stories, making plans, laughing with her until they both lost track of time. Those memories felt like old photographs now, kept in a drawer no one opened. As she dried her hands, she whispered to herself, "How did we get here?" There was no answer, only silence. And in that silence, Elena realized something heartbreaking. Sometimes love doesn't end because of a fight or a mistake. Sometimes it ends when 2 people stop trying to understand each other. Elena began noticing things she had once ignored. Daniel's late nights had become more frequent. His excuses, work meetings, urgent projects, team discussions sounded rehearsed. He came home tired, showered immediately, and lay in bed scrolling through his phone until he fell asleep. Elena tried not to question him, but her heart whispered truths she wasn't ready to face. One Friday evening, her colleague Anna invited her for dinner. Normally, Elena would decline. She preferred quiet nights at home with Daniel. But these days, home no longer felt warm. It felt like a place she tiptoed around, careful not to disturb the fragile silence between them. "Come with us," Anna urged. "You look like you need a little break," Elena agreed. During dinner, she laughed a little, even though her heart felt heavy. Anna, who had always been observant, leaned closer and whispered, "Are you all right? You seem distant." It was strange hearing someone else describe exactly how she felt. Elena forced a small smile, just tired. When she returned home later that night, the flat was dark except for a faint light coming from the living room. Daniel was there, sitting on the sofa with his phone. He looked up when she entered, surprised to see her. "You're home late," he said. She nodded. "I went out with Anna and some colleagues." "Oh," he paused. "You didn't tell me." Elena swallowed the ache in her throat. "I didn't know it mattered." Daniel didn't reply. He turned his gaze back to his phone, and that small gesture felt sharper than any argument. She walked past him and went straight to the bedroom. She didn't slam the door. She didn't want to create drama. She simply lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. A storm swirled inside her chest, heavy, dark, waiting to break. A few minutes later, she heard Daniel coming into the room. He sat on the edge of the bed, back facing her. "Elena," he said quietly, "I know things haven't been easy lately." She turned her head slightly, then talked to me. "I will, just not tonight." Her heart broke a little more. He continued, "I just need some space to figure things out. I'm not trying to hurt you." She sat up slowly, her voice soft but firm. "Daniel, space is not the problem. You can have space, but don't push me out completely. I don't want to lose you." He finally looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, she saw a real emotion in his eyes. Fear. But it wasn't the fear of losing her. It was the fear of admitting something he had been hiding. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly. That confession, honest yet incomplete, sent a shiver through her. It was the closest he had come to telling her the truth, but it wasn't enough. Not for her. Not for their love. Not anymore. That night, Elena cried silently, not because of something Daniel did, but because of everything he didn't say. The turning point arrived on a quiet Sunday afternoon, an ordinary day that would later feel like a line drawn between the before and after of Elena's life. Daniel had gone out, saying he needed to clear his head. Elena stayed home, cleaning the flat in slow, thoughtful movements. She washed the curtains, rearranged the bookshelves, and wiped every surface as if tidying the house could somehow tidy her heart too. While she was folding laundry, she heard a soft vibration on the coffee table. Daniel had forgotten his spare phone, the simple one he used only for calls and messages. He rarely used it. It was usually left untouched for days. But today it buzzed again. A message. Elena froze. She didn't want to look. She didn't want to be the kind of person who checked her partner's phone. Love, she believed, should never need searching for evidence. But something inside her, something tired, wounded, and painfully human, told her that the answers she had been begging for were finally within reach. After the third vibration, her hands moved on their own. She picked up the phone. The message preview showed a name she didn't recognize. "Is everything okay? Haven't heard from you since last night." Her heartbeat quickened. For a moment, she hoped it was just a friend, a colleague, someone harmless. But her fingers trembled as she opened the message thread. There were only a few messages, short, vague, careful. Nothing openly romantic, no confessions, no obvious betrayal. But the tone was wrong. Too familiar, too emotional, too intimate. "I miss talking to you. I hope you're all right. Did you sleep well?" Elena felt her stomach twist painfully. This wasn't proof of cheating. This wasn't proof of innocence either. It was something in between, something far more confusing. A connection, a space she used to fill, a crack that someone else had slipped into. Her hands shook as she put the phone down. Her breath became unsteady. She sat on the sofa, pressing her palms against her eyes. It wasn't the messages that hurt the most. It was the realization that Daniel had been sharing pieces of himself with someone else. Pieces he no longer shared with her. An hour later, Daniel returned home. He looked tired, as usual. When he saw her, he gave a small, hesitant smile. "Hey," she nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "Hi." He walked past her towards the bedroom before noticing something on the table. His phone. He stopped, then slowly turned to face her. "Elena," he said, his voice low. "Did you look at my phone?" She didn't lie. She didn't pretend. She simply met his eyes. It vibrated. I saw the name. I opened it. Daniel closed his eyes as if bracing for impact. "Elena, it's not what you think." She swallowed hard. "Then what is it, Daniel?" He hesitated, too long, too painfully. "I don't know," he whispered. And that answer, uncertain, weak, and terribly honest, broke something inside her that no message ever could. For the first time in weeks, The silence between them wasn't soft, it was sharp. Daniel stood in the doorway, his phone in his hand, while Elena sat on the sofa with her fingers intertwined tightly, trying to steady her breaths. Something in the air had shifted. It was no longer about guesses or quiet doubts. The truth had entered the room, and neither of them could pretend it didn't exist. "Can we sit?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded and took a seat opposite her. Not beside her, opposite. The distance between them felt symbolic, and it hurt more than she expected. "Tell me who she is," Elena said, her voice calm despite the storm inside her. Daniel rubbed his palms together. "Her name is Claire. She works in the same building. We've only spoken a few times. It's nothing serious." "Nothing serious," Elena repeated softly, "but serious enough for her to message you at night. Serious enough for you to change your phone password. Serious enough that you talk to her more than you talk to me. I didn't mean for it to become complicated," he said. Her heart throbbed painfully at that word. Complicated. That was the word people used when they didn't want to admit they were slipping away. "How long?" she asked. "Just a couple of months," he replied, eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. "We only talk, that's all." "Only talk," she echoed. "But you don't talk to me." Daniel looked up then, and for the first time, she saw guilt in his eyes. Real heavy guilt. "Elena, I'm sorry. I should have told you things weren't okay with me. I should have asked for help instead of..." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Instead of turning to someone else?" She finished for him. He winced but didn't deny it. Elena took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly. "I'm not angry that another woman exists. I'm hurt that you didn't reach for me when you started slipping away." Daniel leaned back and covered his face with both hands. "I didn't want to burden you." "Burden me?" she whispered. "Daniel, I'm your partner. Isn't that what love is? Sharing the heavy things?" He didn't answer. She continued, her voice breaking. "Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air, trembling. Daniel opened his mouth, but the hesitation, those few seconds of silence, spoke more truth than any words he could offer. Elena watched the struggle in his expression, and her heart knew the answer before he said anything. "I care about you," he finally said. "I really do, but I don't know if I love you the same way anymore." Her breath caught painfully, like something inside her had snapped. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked confused. "For what?" "For finally telling me the truth." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wanted to stay strong, at least for this moment. "We can fix things if you want to," she said softly. "But I need to know if you're willing." Daniel looked down. "I don't know," he whispered again. And that uncertainty, those 3 quiet words, felt like the beginning of the end. The following week felt like walking on fragile glass. Every movement, every word, every breath carried the risk of shattering something further. Daniel had not moved out, and Elena had not asked him to. They continued living under the same roof, but everything between them felt temporary, as if the walls themselves understood that this home was slowly losing its meaning. Daniel spoke a little more now, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps because the truth had been forced out into the open. But the conversations were short, careful, and wrapped in politeness. They were no longer the natural, warm exchanges they used to share. Their laughter had disappeared. Their comfort had vanished. Only cautious words remained. On Tuesday evening, Elena cooked dinner as usual. She placed the plates on the table, unsure if Daniel would join her or take his food to the living room. To her surprise, he sat down opposite her. They ate in silence. Halfway through the meal, Elena asked gently, "Are you still talking to her?" Daniel paused. "No. I told her we needed space. It was wrong." Elena nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." He didn't respond further, but the heaviness in his eyes told her that cutting ties with the other woman didn't suddenly repair what had broken between them. Later that night, Elena sat alone on the balcony. The breeze was cool, brushing against her skin like a quiet reminder that the world outside continued moving, no matter how much her own world stood still. The city lights glittered far below, each one a tiny dream glowing in the darkness. She closed her eyes. How did our love become something we tiptoe around? The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Daniel stepped onto the balcony, hands tucked into his pockets. "Can I sit?" he asked. She nodded, though her heart tightened. They sat side by side, a small space between them that felt enormous. "Elena," Daniel began, his voice low, "I'm trying. I really am. But I don't want to lie to you." She turned slightly. "Then don't." He looked down at his hands. I don't feel the same way I used to. Not completely. Not the way you deserve. The words stung, but they didn't surprise her. Deep down, she had known this for a long time. I appreciate your honesty, she said softly. But what do we do now? Daniel shook his head. I don't know. I don't want to hurt you anymore. You already have, she whispered. But keeping me in uncertainty is worse. He closed his eyes. I never meant for this to happen. Elena looked out at the city, her voice calm but trembling. I know. People don't plan to fall out of love. It just happens quietly. A long silence passed between them. Finally, Daniel spoke. Maybe we should take some time apart. Her heart dropped. Not because she hadn't expected it, but because hearing it out loud made it real. Is that what you want? She asked. I think it's what we need, he said. Elena nodded, though her entire world felt like it was tilting. That night, she realized something painful. Love doesn't always end with anger or betrayal. Sometimes it ends when two people no longer move in the same direction, and she wasn't sure if they ever would again. Daniel didn't leave immediately. He took a few days to think, or at least that's what he told Elena. The flat was quiet in those days, filled with slow movements and cautious footsteps. Elena continued her routine, waking early, preparing breakfast, going to work, but everything felt heavier. The air around her carried an unspoken countdown. On Saturday morning, she woke to the sound of a zip being pulled. She sat up slowly, her heart tightening. Daniel was standing near the wardrobe, a half-open suitcase on the bed. So this was the day. He didn't notice her at first. He folded his clothes with a stiff, almost mechanical focus. A part of her wished he would turn around, see her awake, and change his mind. Another part of her, the part that had grown tired of waiting, knew that this moment had been coming for a long time. Are you leaving today? She asked quietly. Daniel froze before turning to face her. I think it's better if I go for a while. Just until things settle. Things won't settle if we're apart, she said, her voice soft, not accusing. They will just become different, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Elena, I don't know how to fix this, and I don't think staying here pretending everything is fine will help. Pretending. Yes, they had been pretending for weeks. She sat on the edge of the bed. Where will you stay? At my brother's place. Just for now. The words hung in the air, cold and final. Daniel continued packing, but his movement slowed. Elena watched him, trying to memorize everything. His shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly, the way he avoided her eyes. She wondered if he was hurting too, or if he was simply relieved to be leaving. When he zipped his suitcase shut, the sound felt like a door closing inside her heart. He stood there for a moment, uncertain. Elena, he began, but the rest of the sentence faded. She waited. She hoped he would say something, anything that sounded like love, like reconsideration, like regret. Instead, he said nothing. Do you want me to help with anything? She asked, even though the words tasted like broken glass. No, I've got it. They walked to the door together, a quiet procession of two people who used to be everything to each other. Daniel placed his suitcase by the door and turned to her. I'm sorry, he said, barely above a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. Elena nodded. I know. I just need time to think. Take the time, she replied. But don't leave me waiting for something that isn't coming back. He swallowed hard. I'll keep in touch. She knew he meant well, but she also knew that messages of keeping in touch rarely repaired what had already cracked beyond fixing. Daniel opened the door, hesitated for a brief moment, then stepped out. The door closed softly behind him. Elena stood still. Her heart didn't break loudly. It didn't shatter into pieces. It simply cracked quietly, like something delicate losing its last bit of strength. In the silence of the empty flat, she whispered to herself, "This is where love ends, isn't it?" And for the first time, she let herself cry. Freely, painfully, honestly. The flat felt strangely large after Daniel left, as though the rooms had stretched overnight. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was hollow, like a shell left behind after something living slipped out. For the first 2 days, Elena moved through the space as if she were visiting a house that no longer belonged to her. Every corner carried memories. The sofa where they used to watch films. The kitchen where he would steal bites while she cooked. The balcony where they once planned their future. Now each memory stung like a small, sharp thorn. But there was something else too, something unexpected. A faint sense of relief. It surprised her. It scared her. But she didn't ignore it. On Wednesday morning, she made herself a cup of tea and stood by the window, watching the sunrise paint the buildings gold. For the first time in weeks, the weight around her chest felt a little lighter. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was the first breath she had taken without feeling like she was drowning. At work, people noticed she was quieter than usual, but no one asked too many questions. Only Anna approached her gently. "Everything okay at home?" she asked. Elena hesitated before answering honestly. "No, Daniel moved out." Anna's face softened with sympathy. "I'm really sorry, Elena." Elena nodded. "It's painful. But I think it was going to happen anyway." That afternoon, she walked to the small park near her office during lunch. She sat on a bench and watched families passing by, children running, people laughing. Life was happening all around her, untouched by her personal heartbreak. And she realized something important. The world doesn't stop for anyone's pain. But maybe that was a reminder that she didn't have to stop either. That evening, she cleaned the flat, not to erase Daniel's presence, but to reclaim her own. She folded the blanket in the living room, opened the windows to let fresh air in, and finally washed the mug Daniel always used. Each small action felt like stitching up a tear inside her. Later, she lit a candle in the bedroom, the warm scent filling the space. She sat on the bed and whispered to herself, "You're still here. You're still standing." She didn't realize she was crying until the tears touched her hands. But these tears were different. They weren't from fear. They weren't from confusion. They were from acceptance, the first step towards healing. Over the next few days, she tried new routines. She went for walks after work. She cooked meals she loved. She signed up for a weekend pottery class, something she had always wanted to try. She even laughed a bit. Small laughs, quiet ones. But they were real. Daniel texted her once, "I hope you're doing all right." She stared at the message for a long time before replying, "I will be. Take care, Daniel." It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't hope. It was closure wrapped in simplicity. That night, she stood on the balcony again. This time, the city lights didn't feel lonely. They felt steady, like the world reminding her that life goes on, and so could she. Elena took a deep breath. For the first time, it didn't hurt to breathe. Months passed. Elena learned the art of moving forward, not because she wanted to forget, but because she realized that life was bigger than one heartbreak. The flat, once heavy with silence and tension, now felt like a space she could finally call her own. She rearranged the furniture, added small touches of color, and kept the windows open to let in sunlight. Every corner reflected her strength and resilience, a quiet testimony to the love she had survived and the life she was reclaiming. Daniel occasionally sent messages, short, polite, careful, but their conversations were neutral, like two acquaintances reconnecting after a shared storm. Elena didn't respond immediately, and when she did, her words were calm and measured. She had no desire to reopen wounds, no wish to cling to a past that had already slipped through her fingers. One crisp Sunday morning, she walked through the city park she had grown to love. Children laughed around her, couples held hands, and the sound of life was a gentle reminder that the world was still turning. Elena felt a strange comfort in the chaos, the beauty of existence continuing, even after her love story had fractured. She found a quiet bench under a blossoming tree and sat down. The petals fell around her like tiny reminders that endings could be beautiful too. She let herself remember Daniel, the warmth of his smile, the softness of his voice. But she didn't linger on the pain. Instead, she focused on what she had learned. Love was not just about holding on. Sometimes, love meant letting go, honoring both the joy and the hurt, and still finding a way to breathe again. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Anna, asking if she wanted to join a pottery exhibition that afternoon. Elena smiled. She had discovered new passions during the months of solitude. She had picked up painting, tried hiking, and even joined a small book club. Life had filled in the cracks that Daniel's absence had left, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Elena replied, "I'd love to. See you soon." The day moved slowly, peacefully. She wandered through the gallery, appreciating the colors, the textures, the creativity of others. She even bought a small painting that reminded her of a sunrise, hopeful, gentle, enduring. Later that evening, she returned home and placed the painting near the window. The room glowed softly in the fading light. She sat on the sofa, cup of tea in hand, and allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She had loved deeply, and she had been hurt. But she had survived. She had grown stronger, and she had discovered that her own company could be enough. When the night finally came, Elena walked to the balcony. The city lights twinkled like stars, familiar yet new. She whispered to herself softly, without sadness. I am still here. I am still me. And I am enough. For the first time in a long while, she felt free, not from love, but from the weight of loss. Love had broken her, yes, but it had also taught her something vital: resilience, strength, courage, and the quiet power of choosing oneself, even when life doesn't go as planned. She watched the night sky, letting the cool wind brush her face. Somewhere deep inside, a small flame of hope had begun to burn. Not a flame for another person, not yet, but for herself, for the life she would build, for the dreams she still carried, for the love that was still possible. One day, in its own time, in its own way. And in that moment, Elena smiled. The breaking point of love had been painful, but it had not defeated her. It had made her rise,